The International Medical University presents. Today's topic is about antibiotics.
Health depends on antibiotics. If we overuse and misuse them like this light bulb, they won't work when we really need them. So follow your doctor's advice. Cold or flu, take care, not antibiotics.
The basic idea of antibiotics wasn't really correct. You see, no amount of antibiotics will help you get rid of a virus. That's what you have with the flu. Antibiotics are bacterial. And too much antibiotics can actually weaken your body. Now, this major ad campaign that's come out here to try to tell people and doctors do not use antibiotics for viruses. It just doesn't work. Stop giving the antibiotics for the sniffles. We have to tell these doctors this. And antibiotics have now been proven not necessary in dentistry. You see, we always thought that they needed to do this in dentistry, but no, that's not proven as well. The basic idea of these antibiotics should be replaced with probiotics and into the revolution of getting away from the synthetics that insult the body into fortifying the body and fortifying your own basic immune system. Keep them home. Don't take them to the doctor.
Science.
Retired teacher Lil Karen Scarrett counts herself lucky after having a close call with a bacterium resistant to many antibiotics. The Norwegian grandmother had just arrived on holiday in India when she broke her leg in a car crash. While at hospital in India, she picked up a bug before being flown home to Norway.
From the airport and to the hotel, there was this accident. I got home eventually. Well, I got a phone from the doctor, and he said that I had this Klebsiella that I had found a bug, which were very dangerous. I had to be very careful, and people around me had to take care also.
Lil Karen had been colonized but not infected by a potentially lethal bacterium. The strain of Klebsiella she was carrying is so resistant that there's only one antibiotic available that can be used to treat it.
What's important in Lila Karen's case is that the Norwegian healthcare system was able to immediately screen her and put her in an isolated room until they had the results. This is very important because it probably prevented the hospital of having a spread of this very resistant bacterium.
Norway has a great track record on finding and containing antibiotic-resistant bacteria like those picked up by Lil Karen. One reason is that patients hospitalized abroad are screened and isolated.
So there's a special ventilation system. So when you walk in, there's a little separate room in front where you enter, you close the outer door, then you'll go through the washing procedure, and then afterwards you can enter the patient room.
The other side to dealing with resistance in bacteria is not to allow it to develop in the first place. Doctors here in Tromsø follow a strict discipline of using antibiotics correctly and only when necessary, and testing patient samples to make sure the correct antibiotics are being used.
And here we can see some examples of the tests we're doing, where you can see that the kind of the white carpet on the bottom of the dish is the bacteria, and then we can see antibiotics being impregnated into these strips. And when there is a zone around, you can see that the substance is effective to kill or inhibit microorganism, whereas when they grow all up to the strip, it means that this drug is not effective. And as you can see on this one, we don't have much choice. It's actually just a single substance here which will have any effect on this microorganism.
Resistance can develop for several reasons. When too many antibiotics are used, when patients aren't given the right antibiotics, take them for the wrong amount of time, or when they don't need them. Bacteria can also mutate and develop resistance on their own. And the problem is widespread.
We associate antibiotic resistance with the hospital frequently. But it's important to note that actually it exists in the community as well. We've seen over the past few years that some bacteria actually, through sustained efforts that certain countries have applied, have been able to decrease their rates of resistance. On the other hand, we have other bacteria that have slowly been increasing throughout Europe and the world.
That increase is a threat not only in hospitals but also in the wider community. Resistant bacteria can be picked up anywhere, as Italian university professor Paolo Visca found out when he set off from the port of Nettuno near Rome on a fishing holiday. After a few days, he fell ill with a serious urinary tract infection.
In the
initial stages, I had a classic septic fever, shaking chills, profuse sweating, not being able to go to the bathroom to urinate, and so the problem was really serious at the beginning.
In Paolo's case, he had an E. coli urinary tract infection, which is the most common bacterium that causes these infections. In his case, he had an E. coli which was resistant to multiple antibiotics, and what's significant is that he took an antibiotic that should have worked. And it didn't, because it was resistant to that and a number of other ones.
It took 2 months and 3 courses of different antibiotics before Paolo's infection was successfully treated. Nobody knows where he picked up the infection. So what's he learned from the experience?
Never self-medicate, never treat your illness by yourself, thinking that you know how to treat it. Always go and see a doctor, your GP.
Both doctors and patients have their role to play, and campaigns like European Antibiotic Awareness Day aim to keep the issue in the public eye. Here in Bologna, Maria Luisa Moro has spent the last decade promoting the message that antibiotics shouldn't be overused and should be used correctly.
This is one of the drawings made by children in our campaign for the prudent use of antibiotics. We asked children to draw what they were thinking, what they knew about bacteria and antibiotics.
Parents are one of Maria Luisa's priority groups, along with the elderly residents of retirement homes.
That's very nice. Le infezioni più comuni, quelle per cui si usano di più.
The most common infections, those for which antibiotics are mostly used, are upper respiratory infections in children, because children have an elevated risk of infection, often from viruses which are incorrectly treated with antibiotics.
Vengono trattate con antibiotici.
The other main group under risk of infections, inappropriately treated with antibiotics, are urinary infections in adults.
Sono gli adulti, sono infezioni urinarie.
The threat is growing since new strains of bacteria resistant to antibiotics are being spread across Europe. But experts are convinced that this threat can be contained.
I think that it's possible in the future if everyone is able to use antibiotics correctly, and if infection control practices are used correctly, I think that we can turn the tide. But it has to be done in a very structured manner. It has to be taken very seriously, because this is an issue of patient safety.
An issue of patient safety that's left lasting memories for those who faced infection from these very resistant bacteria, the so-called superbugs.
When I get a distance of it, then I realize more that how serious it was. When I was in the middle of it, I just had to survive from day to day.
In my case, I was lucky, and I consider myself relatively lucky since a series of favorable circumstances made it possible for me to receive the correct treatment in the end. But I think I ran a serious risk.
A risk that we could all face unless antibiotics are only used at the right time and in the right way.
We have to recognize that in the old days, it was just the immune system that worked with people. As we developed different ideas of herbs and different ideas of medicine, different ideas, things started to evolve, and there came along an idea of leeches and other types of cures. And then the Black Death came. This was because of a massive immune failure that happened because of sugar. And the sugar collapsed the immune system and created this vulnerability to bacteria. You see, then Dr. Snow came along and discovered there was a type of area where the water, this type of cholera, this thing, the water was better at a certain height. Fleming found that fungus could kill bacteria. There was balance in the nature, and that there was a thing that could fight bacteria. And we needed antibiotics at certain times. But actually, it was sewage that really started cleaning up the environment, and sewage really helped the world, but antibiotics took the credit. It was actually once we started cleaning the water and we didn't have shit in the streets and piss in the ditches, this is when we started to recognize that there really was an intelligence of life. And Semmelweis found that there was value to wash your hands. And that was the start of it. And even our friend Louis Pasteur, who discovered these ideas of the microbes, he said that the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. It's the body's immune system that does it. It's the immune system that fortifies and strengthens. And that's what we have to do. Now, we have to recognize that penicillin and these other things were good, but too much of them was bad. You see, it was ignorant for us to ignore homeopathy and natural medicine, and that antibiotics seem to be working, but they evolve. You see, they get resistant. They actually develop resistance to these chemicals, these synthetic chemicals that are developed from these natural antibiotics. And when we look at the classes of antibiotics, and we know that human beings are instinctually capable of lying to themselves, that synthetic allopathy has been based mostly on profit, and that ideas of money-driven medicine have to be dealt with. And then the FDA comes along and protects these chemical companies and their massive profits. We have to really take another look at this and another look at the idea, and not just take what Big Pharma does and how they control the government and the FDA by offering different types of jobs or grants or different things. But we have to recognize that it isn't just the drugs, it's the immune system. And that the immune system and the whole history has to go into more of an electrochemistry. The idea is that there is an electrical force in these bacteria that can be dealt with, and a new probiotic, an idea of boosting the immune system. It's a pharmacological fact. Use a synthetic anything's an insult. And here on Antibiotic Awareness Day, where everybody's being told, don't overdo these antibiotics, please. Relax, build the immune system, and stop giving antibiotics like they're just sugar pills and handing them out for anything. We have to recognize that they do have side effects. Read the book about the immune stimulation. Watch the movie. And you'll totally understand much more about how your immune system needs to deal with it, and how sugar weakens your immune system, and how there's a balance in the central nervous system, and how we have an immune system and in balance with our emotions and psycho, soma, and soma psychic. And all of this through the whole system of developing probiotics to help build our immune system and to stop giving these antibiotics for sniffles. It's intelligent that we found out that fungus could kill bacteria and that the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. It's intelligent, and today's the wise doctor is humble and respectful. We have to respect Mother Nature, respect our bodies, respect the natural process, respect our immune system, fortify the immune system. And we have to do everything we can to try to reduce the bacteria, but not to the idea of fanaticism. Let's listen to some words now by our dear friend, the great guru of health, George Carlin.
Because that's what Americans do now. They're always willing to trade away a little of their freedom in exchange for the feeling, the illusion of security. What we have now is a completely neurotic population obsessed with security and safety and crime and drugs and cleanliness and hygiene and germs. There's another thing, germs. Where did this sudden fear of germs come from in this country? Have you noticed this? The media constantly running stories about all the latest infections, salmonella, E. coli, hantavirus, bird flu, and Americans they panic easily, so now everybody's running around scrubbing this and spraying that and overcooking their food and repeatedly washing their hands, trying to avoid all contact with germs. It's ridiculous, and it goes to ridiculous lengths. In prisons, before they give you a lethal injection, they swab your arm with alcohol. It's true. It's true. It's true. Well, they don't want you to get an infection. And you can see their point. Wouldn't want some guy to go to hell and be sick. It would take a lot of the sportsmanship out of the whole execution. Fear of germs, why these fucking pussies? You can't even get a decent hamburger anymore. They cook the shit out of everything now because everybody's afraid of food poisoning. Hey, where's your sense of adventure? Take a fucking chance, will you? You know how many people die in this country from food poisoning every year? 9,000. That's all. It's a minor risk. Take a fucking chance, bunch of goddamn pussies. Besides, what do you think you have an immune system for? It's for killing germs. But it needs practice. It needs germs to practice on. So listen. If you kill all the germs around you and live a completely sterile life, then when germs do come along, you're not going to be prepared. And never mind ordinary germs, what are you going to do when some super virus comes along that turns your vital organs into liquid shit? I'll tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get sick, you're going to die, and you're going to deserve it because you're fucking weak and you got a fucking weak immune system. Now, God damn it. Hey. All right. Let me tell you a true story about immunization, okay? When I was a little boy in New York City in the 1940s, we swam in the Hudson River, and it was filled with raw sewage, okay? We swam in raw sewage, you know, to cool off. And at that time, the big fear was polio. Thousands of kids died from polio every year. But you know something? In my neighborhood, no one ever got polio. No one, ever. You know why? Because we swam in raw sewage. It strengthened our immune systems. The polio never had a prayer. We were tempered in raw shit. So personally, I never take any special precautions against germs. I don't shy away from people who sneeze and cough. I don't wipe off the telephone. I don't cover the toilet seat. And if I drop food on the floor, I pick it up and eat it. I eat it. Yes, I do. Even if I'm at a sidewalk cafe in Calcutta, the poor section, on New Year's morning during a soccer riot. And you know something? In spite of all that so-called risky behavior, I never get infections. I don't get them. I don't get colds. I don't get flu. I don't get headaches. I don't get upset stomachs. And you know why? Because I got a good, strong immune system, and it gets a lot of practice. My immune system is equipped with the biological equivalent of fully automatic military assault rifles with night vision and laser scopes. And we have recently acquired phosphorus grenades, cluster bombs, and anti-personnel fragmentation mines. So, when my white blood cells are on patrol, reconnoitering my bloodstream, seeking out strangers and other undesirables, if they see any suspicious-looking germs of any kind, they don't fuck around. They whip out the weapons, they wax the motherfucker, and deposit the unlucky fellow directly into my colon. Into my colon. There's no nonsense. There's no Miranda warning. There's none of that 3 strikes and you're out shit. First defense, bam, into the colon you go. And speaking of my colon, I want you to know I don't automatically wash my hands every time I go to the bathroom, okay? Can you deal with that? Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. You know when I wash my hands? When I shit on them. That's the only time. And you know how often that happens? Tops, 2, 3 times a week. Tops. Maybe a little more frequently over the holidays, you know what I mean? And I'll tell you something else, my well-scrubbed friends. You don't always need a shower every day. Did you know that? It's overkill. Unless you work out or work outdoors, or for some reason come in intimate contact with huge amounts of filth and garbage every day, you don't always need a shower. All you really need to do is to wash the 4 key areas. Armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. Got that? Armpits, asshole, crotch, and teeth. In fact, you can save yourself a whole lot of time if you simply use the same brush on all 4 areas.
Now, what we've heard him say is some real intriguing ideas that we want to exercise that immune system, fortify it. And we do find that children who live on farms have better immune systems and they have much less allergies because they exercise that immune system. So we have to recognize that there is an idea of bacteria, there is an idea of allergies, but we cannot be over fastidious, but we also need to be better guarded. So these are some ideas of wisdom to you from Desiree Dubnay.